McDonald's isn't something you associate with dread or despair. But after witnessing these long-forgotten McDonald's restaurants, you might have a change of heart about the way you look at any structure that seems permanent, but particularly ones that serve up Big Macs. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell. Flavio Grana's Archless in America. This image of an archless McDonald's is eerie and unsettling, not just because of the overgrowth that accompanies it, or the thought that the place is done mixing McFlurries and serving up burgers, but because it is still instantly recognizable, even without its iconic golden arches. Given the pace that these joints pop up, you definitely know what they look like, even from a distance. These buildings lack character, with their standard mansard roofs being their dead giveaway. The depth coaxed out of this particular abandoned McDonald's location, sadly anonymous, is stripped of all of its brand identity, leaving it with no history, just an idea we have of its past. This building stands silently in the moonlight, as if waiting for the photographer to enter and devour its secrets, or as if to devour him instead. All that we know is that this building sings a song of its former glory as it stands alone, a washed-out monument to the very blatant culture of consumerism that it had stood for all these years, and will continue to stand for generations to come. It isn't just the atmosphere of the image that haunts us, but rather the fact that it's so quiet, maybe too quiet. The overgrowth tells us of its abandonment, can't make us help but wonder what they could possibly not want us to see on the inside, or what they're keeping away from the outside. UK's sweet and saucer secret. We're not sure how many of you are aware of this, but Roswell has aliens. Even fast food chains are so subtly trying to tell us this, which is why McDonald's in Roswell was built in the shape of a very distinctive flying saucer. But hold on, they're not the only ones that thought of this. Enter into the ring a former McDonald's restaurant in Alconbury, UK. First launched into our world in 1990 as the Megatron, this highly specific saucer-shaped eatery turned out to be a big bang of an interplanetary flop. Soon, in 1993, it reopened under the McDonald's group, with its golden arches and retro-futuristic insides like somewhere the Jetsons would eat. A favorite among urban explorers armed with nothing but their cameras, this site of potential and promise stood in dusty silence for as long as the land could hold it. It crumbled into a slow decay. The windowless interior and the looming exterior makes for a very suffocating atmosphere, and patrons who were young enough to be enticed by its promises remember it being a bland experience, almost as if sitting in a septic tank for a less than stellar meal. 15 years into the game, it shut down for good. It remained shut and untouched for a good half of a decade, before being demolished in mid-2008. The unexpected M. It's not very often that the golden arches of a McDonald's can go unnoticed, but these ones did, and for quite a while. Discovered by Flickr user Rusty Jaw while he explored an abandoned naval communications station, it only leaves us with more questions than answers, one of which would be what he even was doing there, and what even is a McDonald's sign doing at an abandoned naval base. These eerie pictures of this abandoned station is made lighter and easier to handle, given that they were taken during the day. But imagine the surprise and shock one must have felt, stumbling upon this symbol of consumerism in a place so private. Oh, the stories those arches can tell us. This dusty, abandoned building complete with cobwebs, solitary chairs, tables, and mattresses has seen a lot, but probably not as much as that McLogo. Why would it even be there? Was it like a joke in the cafeteria? Imagine refurbishing and re-electrifying the sign, and then mounting it on the dining room wall. That would make some romantic lighting at a bland old naval base, wouldn't it? A Stormy McFlurry. If you weren't already afraid of Ronald McDonald, check out this barely standing alter ego of the clown that came about. The closest to a zombie that you will ever get to see of the clown without any copyright parodies coming into the picture. This guy was found barely standing in Biloxi, Mississippi, shortly after Hurricane Katrina devastated the area in September of 2005. It was a while before reconstruction was even brought into the picture, but by then, as you can see, it was already too late. This shattered and shuttered McDonald's, as well as ones that surrounded the neighboring Gulf Coast, were all well beyond repair and saving. These images cover exactly what it must have been like to have been caught in the eye of the storm, and getting left behind in the wake of its path of destruction. Dripping wet, damp, and tattered with not even an erect tree in sight, this place was left in shambles. Thankfully, no one was hurt in taking this picture, or caught in the middle of this natural disaster. Only more bad news follows, as made evident by this horrific Ronald McDonald that stood as a memorial to the devastation behind it. The bad news doesn't end there. Today, in its place stands another fast food chain, a Wendy's. We hope zombie Ronald got the goodbye he deserved. McMoon's McDonald's. Just like the stuff of conspiracy theorist dreams, this abandoned McDonald's was a site of some major recovery of what was considered to be lost moon images, and the conviction of a very, very smart woman. NASA archivist Nancy Evans refused to destroy 2,500 reels of tape consisting of complex data recordings of compressed images and radio transmissions, and therefore made it her responsibility to keep them away from harm, in an abandoned McDonald's donated by NASA that eventually did fund the project. These images are haunting, not because they're empty and dreary, but because of how alive and out of place they are. The tins of reel, the massive old computers, newer Macs, and piles of paper, no Big Macs. One of the images is of a sleeping bag among the reels. And boy, it must have been a one-of-a-kind ride of having been on the team of space aficionados that had got together to work on this level of manual processing. Eventually, this place was termed McMoon's, where the initial restoration took place, and went from being desperately underfunded to being funded with proper dues, now called the Lunar Orbiter Image Recovery Project, LOIRP, located just outside the Ames Research Center in Mountain View, California, making it one small fries for man and a giant computer Mac for mankind. McDonaldland. Remember McDonaldland? This Mickey D's, that was hugely popular at the time, created this magical universe filled with creepy burger-like animatronic people who looked like equally creepy puppets from an early 70s TV show. The same reason for its downfall. After lawyers caught wind of this infringement of copyright, the concept went to the dogs and became a part of some untold history. Today, the abandoned play park consists of stationary bodies of these burger people as they forlornly look over the industrial area near I-35 and Grand in Oklahoma City. Images of this long-lost character, and more like him, were captured by explorers and shared online for us to see. The now disassembled playground is a sad sight, like a graveyard for childhood dreams gone wrong. With the decay and lack of care, the place has fallen to ruin and loneliness, with only the wind to keep it company. If that isn't sad enough for you, think of it as a place where a lot of dreams came to die, mascots and advertising ideas included. This is why when you do something, make sure someone else hasn't already done it first. Except for exploring these places, of course. The more images we have, the better it is for us. Filled with characters mostly old and almost forgotten, the place acts as an almost morbid museum that, with the slow movement of time, will leave mostly paintless blocks of plastic shapes behind. Frozen golden arches. Established during World War II during the battle to expel Japanese forces from the Aleutian Islands, the Adak Naval Air Facility is what helped boost the population of Adak to around 10,000, as well as what helped support the world's northernmost McD's. However, by 1997, the base closed down, and by 2010, the town's population shrunk to a mere 300. And, as you might have guessed, the northernmost McDonald's was an early casualty of what came to be a super downsizing. While it still stands tall where it did all those years ago, it remains padlocked. This Flickr user Travis visited the place in early summer, in 2009, and documented the spookily well-preserved state that is Adak's one and only McDonald's that ever was. With the paint slowly chipping and its insides a color scheme from so long ago, the place acts almost like a time capsule, filled with memorabilia from a time long forgotten, and locked away in this cold little town. The menus are still up, windows unboarded, and overgrowth all over the place, making it a very pretty hike to a place so empty and even scary. With its very specific dino-themed meals, one can easily tell the last big thing this Mickey D's saw was Jurassic Park. Dino-sized fries? Yes, please. The last McDonald's burger in Iceland. Now, this might not be another long-lost McDonald's, but here we have the long-lost McDonald's hamburger. In late 2009, the last McDonald's in Iceland closed its doors. One patron decided that instead of eating his last Icelandic Big Mac, he'd take the burger and preserve it in his garage for a few years as an experiment. After 3 years, he checked on it only to discover that the burger remained as pristine as it did the day he purchased it. He decided to donate the relic to the National Museum of Iceland, where it would be preserved for another year or so. Infamous for its unchanged state, the burger and fries that accompanied it were moved to a display in Bus Hostel Reykjavik, where it can be observed indefinitely via a live webcam feed. Perhaps, if you're lucky, you can hopefully catch a hint of mold growing somewhere on this not-so-happy meal. But don't count on it. This burger and fries have been preserved without decay for over 8 years. Seems Iceland had the same idea when it comes to high-quality food, something Gordon Ramsay would probably agree with and would have voted for. I mean, his opinion of McDonald's is quite clear. In 2007, during an interview with TV Guide, Ramsay was asked that if he was hungry while driving down the highway and spotted a McDonald's, would he indulge in a Big Mac? His response was that he'd rather eat a f***ing cow pie sandwich. 2 years later, Iceland seemed to share that notion. Disposable Arches. A few years ago, Boston went through some major redevelopment plans for Boylston Street, and that saw the end of many chains in the area, including local Burger Kings and McDonald's biting the dust, being replaced by a mixed-use commercial community called the Viridian. What was sad about this ordeal was the way the elimination of the admittedly tacky red, white, and yellow arches it's so well known for unceremoniously abandoned in a dumpster, sadly on display for a number of days before anything could come out of it. Nothing came out of it, and not much was known about why this was okay, with the symbol of happiness being thrown around like that all the time, in an unbelievably uncaring and obvious manner. Folks of Twitter took it upon themselves to document this urban tragedy, this dumpster dive version, a treat for all who love the urban abandonments and McDonald's relics alike. The treatment of the logo, as well as other fast food eateries, and the lack of response from the higher-ups only make us think about how consumerism takes too much for granted. One place shuts down, another pops up, leaving behind a multitude of people that end up unemployed and hungry. The scariest thing of all might just be how there are so many of these outlets, despite there being so many more of them that are abandoned and a part of the unexplored. The Floating McBarge. The abandoned McDonald's on a barge in Vancouver, Canada, has now been termed the McBarge. Built in 1986 and abandoned since after enjoying a long enough run, leaving a lot of kids with memories of eating on a boat. Anchored in Burrard Inlet with not even one Big Mac in sight, today the McBarge is covered in graffiti and absolutely run down on the inside, its fate today left uncertain. What's interesting about the McBarge is that Facebook has a group dedicated to people sharing memories and pictures of the place. Today, 30 years since its closure, it's a reminder of its former glory, however, with no happy meal in sight. This McBarge has been referred to as a modern-day relic, and we can see why. A conglomerate as huge as McDonald's, in its attempt to redefine architecture, took upon itself to outdo its own ideas. And with that came the floating restaurant, popular among urban explorers who, as a friendly nod to the establishment, paddle their way onto the structure with some burgers from a sister location, discover that exploration of the site comes with that very specific color scheme that found its home in McDonald's branches so many years ago. The paint mostly mildewy and peeling off the walls. The atmosphere is moist, crumbling, and cold, while still being such an important part of our modern history. Plans to refurbish the place came about in 2016, but only time will tell. If you liked our video, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and don't abandon that notification bell.